So my job here at the London School of Hygiene is as the lecturer in Geographical Information Systems. And most people don't really understand what that is. It's a bit grand and it tends to get simplified to, hey, are you the map guy? And to some degree, that is what I do. I produce maps. But a lot of the time, I'm not simply producing maps. I'm working with data sets, how we collect them, how we store them, and how we visualize them. And it's on that aspect that I want to talk to you today, about looking at a new way of collecting data called opportunistic data collection, and how we can use simple tools to collect data, which is quite often thought to be quite complicated. Now, location has always been considered important in the study of diseases. We are sitting in the John Snow Lecture Theatre, and obviously most of us sitting here will know perfectly well John Snow's map of the Broad Street cholera outbreak. And during these very early times, and including this one, this map was from our London School of Hygiene map archive, and it shows that we mapped data, we mapped diseases from the time that we were studying them. And the thing about them is it's not difficult to produce maps, it's difficult to collect data. At the time, they would quite often either take out a military surveyor with them, or they would produce these amazing hand-drawn maps. I know my maps would look nowhere near this good if I had to do mine in watercolour. But nowadays, we have so many more choices available to us. So we have online data sets, we have amazing satellite photographs, and we have global positioning systems which allow us to go out and mark location wherever we are. We also have very good online groups. So there's groups, organisations like Missing Maps, which are proceeding to map the areas of neglect before there's an emergency there, or OpenStreetMap, which provides facilities to do this. The thing about this is you would think with all this new data, it would be so much further on than we were 160 years ago. The sad thing is that in some respects we're not, and it's amazing how often the location is missed out of what we collect in data. In my role, I've constantly wondered about this. Why do we miss out this? Why is location not created? What is it that's blocking it? And I always ask public health professionals why that is the case, and I always get the same 4 answers. It's not my job. I don't have time to do that. I don't have the skills or equipment to do it. Or simply, I didn't think about it at the time. Now let's clear out the last one first. We have known, John Snow 160 years ago knew location was important. Okay, so just assume that the location of villages, the locations of clinics is going to be of interest to someone and collect it. If we could do that, then we'd be a lot further on. Sadly, I don't think it's that easy. I think in public health, we have a slightly awkward situation with data, an awkward relationship with data. It's almost like a light switch. We're either in data collection mode or we're not. And partly, I think that's due to the fact that most public health professionals have almost no training in how to collect data, how to manage data. And yet they're sent out into the field under these very stressful circumstances and expected to be in charge of collecting their data. And that causes lots of problems. It causes this sort of blinkering effect of our data. I'm responsible for this aspect of data, so I'm going to do that well. I'm not going to worry what anyone else is doing. I'm not going to worry how the data is used. I'm simply going to collect my data, and that's all I'm going to do. Sadly, what that means is we're missing a lot of opportunities. And we're also not collecting data anywhere near efficiently. We only have to look at the West Africa Ebola outbreak to see how much data we didn't collect, despite having people all over the place. And I think we need to change this idea of having this very simplistic on-off data collection methodology. Now, I started thinking about this first about 18 years ago working in Ghana. And I was working on a project which had a huge number of field workers. I think there were around about 500. And they visited every single household in every district once a month. And that gave us massive powers to collect all this information. And whenever I did field work, I was chauffeured around with the fieldwork team in a research centre truck. And we had that time in which to effectively work. But what we ended up doing is most of the time is sleeping. catching up on the last night's sleep. And this really made me wonder, we must be missing tricks here. Why aren't we using these opportunities? Why aren't we using the fact that we've got people in the field to collect information? So instead of thinking about data as a simple on and off switch, I want you to think about data more as a dial. We are always taking in information. Everything we do, the people we speak to, the conversations we have, the things we see as we're driving or sitting on a train, all of that is information. Some of it will be useful, some of it won't be. And then we have this dial that goes from our just looking at observing what's going on in the field to our much more systematic data collection, where we're doing the type of stuff that we're used to. We've got our forms, we've got our field teams, we know when we're going where. And then we've got everything going in between. And it's using these opportunities which are so important. So in Ghana, for instance, we were very interested in access to services. So I said, well, why don't we ask the drivers who are driving all around the place to record their start destination, their end destination, and the start time and end time, and how many miles on their mileometer. And then we can use that information to look at how far it is between all our different villages. And everyone thought this was a brilliant idea. So we went up to the drivers and we requested they do this, only to be told that they have to do this, they have a driver's log. And yet nobody knew. All of this data was collected, had been collected for years, and nobody knew that it existed. And that's a prime example of quite often how we miss information that's already being collected just by thinking a bit too on-off. The other issue was always going to be the skills gap and the equipment. In Ghana, we couldn't afford to give everyone GPS receivers, so how do we collect spatial data? Well, that has now been solved by our smartphones. The thing about smartphones is they're pretty much universally used around the world now. At least phones are. Everywhere you go, you see phones. So I can walk out into a village almost anywhere, take out my phone, and nobody looks at me as if I'm spying on them or anything like that. They're a brilliant way of collecting information. The other thing about smartphones is that they contain the two things which make us really useful. They contain cameras and they contain GPS receivers. And it is that makes collecting data in the field so easy nowadays. The other thing is we always have them with them. I can just about see you in the audience, but can I just have a quick show? Hold up your hands if you've got a smartphone. Okay, maybe I should have said, has anyone not got a smartphone? Okay, now put your hand up if you've used your smartphone at any point to take a photograph or use online maps to find out where the nearest tube station or McDonald's is. Okay, that's pretty much everyone. And that shows we're already using opportunistic data sets in our everyday lives. We use these tools, we're used to them. The thing is, we don't carry that across into our work. It is amazing how many people I speak to who've never thought of using these exact same techniques that they use every day in their lives, in their work. And the reason that I'm always given is, oh, Chris, we don't have internet access in that part of the Congo. Well, we forget, we're so used to our phones being connected to the internet all the time, we forget that we don't need them to be connected, even to a mobile signal, to use the GPS and use the camera on our phones. We don't think about it when we're taking a photo. You don't look at your phone and say, do I have internet access? Great, I can take a photo. But with work, we tend to forget that. And once you get over that barrier, we can use these data sets all the time. So I've just come back from Tanzania, where we were doing a study with Mitu and Nimri in the Moranza region, looking at the health of fishing communities around Lake Victoria. And we're doing lots of different things as part of that project. But some of the work we wanted to do was, they're doing surveys in villages. So we took a field trip out to one of the villages. And the first thing was, as I had my phone on airport mode, because I'm too cheap to buy a different SIM card. And whenever we saw something of interest in the village, we just took a photo. So this shows the area where they were drying the fish, and these particular fish will get feed to chickens, they'll be used for animal feed. So I just took a photo with my phone, and because I had the location services switched on, not only do I have the photograph, but I have the coordinate of that location as well. So when I come back to the office, I can upload that photo into my computer or online, and it will automatically place that photo whereabouts you are in the world. Now, for those of you who use social networking sites and have always thought that it was magic that they knew whereabouts you made your latest update from, that's just because everything you do comes with your GPS tag nowadays. So one of the simple tricks that I always recommend to people is if you are visiting towns, if you are visiting clinics, if you're visiting a village, write the name of the village on a piece of paper, the name and the district or the region or whatever it is, and take a photo of that. You then have your village location linked to a photo. In an outbreak, if you've got, imagine all these field workers out at different locations doing this. If all of those field workers sent those to a central crowdsourcing type location, we could upload all of those coordinates into a central database, and then those could be really efficiently dispersed out to the groups who are responding to the outbreak. And that would be far quicker and far more efficient than anything we do currently. And it's really, really simple. If you're doing clinics, if you're visiting clinics, if you're visiting hospitals, if you're visiting latrines, you maybe don't want to stand outside latrines taking photos. People may look at you a little strangely. But we can use the same idea. You just take a photo, it comes with the coordinate. If you want to get really advanced, you can just download a simple app onto your phone, and there's lots of these which are free, and that will give you a fully functional data collection device. So I don't just have to take photos, I can stand, I can click on my button and say mark this particular location, and then I can enter a description of what that location is. When I come back to the office again, I can just upload that data straight away. And here I've just uploaded it onto Google Earth just to show you how simple this is. It's not even using a paid piece of GIS software. It's just something available online or on your computer. And I can upload any point of interest. So the fishing nets is where the photo was taken. Then we got the market where the fish are sold. We've got the bars where the fishermen go afterwards and sadly consume a vast amount of alcohol. And then we've got the fishing offices in the local community. And this is really useful, so I can walk around clicking on any point that I'm interested in. I don't have to do static things. I can leave my phone tracking me all the time. So I have my phone in my back pocket, and I just tell it to track, and then I walk around the area that I'm interested in. So we wanted to do a random household survey, but we wanted to know how to select houses. So we walked around the area we were interested in. When I got back to the office, I uploaded the data and I asked the computer system to randomly select 40 locations within that area, and that gave me the coordinates which we sent back to the mobile phones in the field, and they were able to go to those locations to do the survey. I was speaking to a social scientist who was amazingly excited to know that not only could you record your track, but you could record photographs and voice messages while you were walking. So they were going to be doing walking tours with local communities to see how they interacted with the area. And funnily enough, it was on women's safety in the villages. And they were going to walk through the village and point out areas which they thought were dangerous and why and things like that. And she was able to use her phone, just keep it tracking. And every time they got to an interesting point, she just did a voice recording of what was interesting about that location. And then it was all mapped, and she had an amazing demonstration at the end. Again, using routine, simple technology, which we all have on us and use every day in our lives. We do need to change our attitudes for this to work. Opportunistic data collection is really simple. We just need to think about it. We just need to remember to do it. When you visit a location, record anything that's interest to you. And by doing that, it is far, far more effective. It is very simple. It turns every single one of us into data collection people without having to go on lots of training, without needing expensive technology. And this is probably the only way we're realistically going to be able to map a major outbreak in the type of time that we need to for these types of projects. Thank you.